strange idea.
I'm very religious.
Yeah, so my question being is, do you think atheism and the fact that it's a rejection of religion, do you think it's missing out on, or do you think it has a lack of, or discourages deeper thought, or in the fact that it rejects religious teachings in all aspects?
Sometimes you find people who say that they just don't believe in marriage. Hello. And hello. And they sound very profound, very articulate. And it seems like they know their stuff really, really well. And then you sit them down and have a chat with them. And you realize that their parents or her parents or his parents divorced at the age of 2. He or she got into a few relationships. That didn't work. And despite all of their eloquence, the truth is they're just damaged. It's not that they don't believe in marriage. It's never been modeled to them. And every time they try to make something work, it just fell apart. But they hide their dysfunction in a very clever and cunning way. Let's just say philosophy. They know how to speak well. But I think deep down, the person who no longer believes in marriage really desires intimacy in some shape or form. And given how fickle life is and how fickle human nature is, they desperately desire security of sorts, that they want their future to remain intact, a companion who's always there, sees them, understands them. But, just because you desire something, it doesn't mean you can actually have it. Like anything else, I think atheism is a reaction to something very much as theism is. That there is something about us that desperately seeks meaning. You sit back and you say, does it really mean anything? It's like you spend 10, 15, 20 years of your life married and very invested, and then she leaves you. And she leaves you for who? Kasera. And you say, really? Is this what life is? It's meaninglessness? So something about us seeks meaning. And when it comes to realize that perhaps Judaism or Islam or Buddhism or Christianity no longer does it for them, they say, well, maybe they're all nonsense. Especially these days, given the force and powerful nature of technology, what we call instrumental rationality, that you can actually think about things in a very kind of clear, concise way. I don't know if you know who Sam Harris is. Some ridiculous guy who once in a while gets on the stage and talks about, kind of like Freud, that religion is this childhood fantasy, because we refuse to grow up. We believe in fairy tales, kind of like children in Santa Claus. So he sits on the stage for 2, 3, 4, 5 hours with someone like Jordan Peterson or someone else. Hello. And they go back and forth. But the truth is, you need to worship something. If there is no God out there that you can worship, well, you just worship the way you think about things. You worship yourself, you worship your wife. But you have to find something that's meaningful in your life, and that becomes your temple. That becomes your totem, And then, of course, you can be a very eloquent and powerful atheist, and then you go somewhere and you get diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And if you're not completely detached from life, like Ramana Maharishi or the Buddha or Jesus, then you desperately try to look for some way, some remedy out there that can get rid of your cancer, your disease, because you love life. Maybe you love your companion, maybe you love your children. And so for the first time you find yourself in a church. So there was a guy, Auguste Comte. Comte was to some extent the father of sociology, and he had argued that human beliefs in religion kind of goes through different stages. At first you worship the trees. Pan for panic, that lives in the forest. That's how most of us believed. We lived in the forest, it's dark, trees are huge, animals are vicious. And it's kind of like going to Yosemite and walking at night. It just impacts you in such a strange way. It's much different than walking around the lake. And then he argued that there came a point where we realized that the forest gods are a little too close, a little too intimate, a little too incompetent. So we took these concepts and we threw them upwards. And then we had polytheism, that the belief in many gods, you know, kind of like the Greek pantheon. And there came a point where we realized that there are too many gods to worship. Let's just create one deity, whether it's Allah or Jesus or Yahweh or Elohim, whatever. And let's just believe in one single God who has power over everything else down here. And then there came a point where we realized that there is really no need to believe in a deity out there somewhere, because now we have science. And what science does is it cuts things open very precisely and allows you to see things from the inside. And once you're able to see, the mystery goes away. It's like when you find yourself attracted to someone, you find them full of mystery, and they just happen to be enigmatic. Until you spend some time with them, you get to know them really, really well, and from that point on, boredom slowly begins to creep in. And after a while you realize, well, you've heard their ideas before, you know who they are, what they are, and they no longer possess any mystery. So you kind of just look at them and say, listen, I want to break up with you, right? And so that's what science does. What science does, it removes mystery from life. It allows you to see things from the inside. And so he had argued that human evolution has gotten itself to a place where it worships science. Now, one of the things about Auguste Comte was that he didn't believe in religion, but he formed a cult, and he became the leader or the head of this cult. And he put down some rituals, some ceremonies, things that people had to worship. And they had to actually worship him. And that goes way back into his psychology, because when he was young, he was married, his wife was a little crazy, he fell in love with a 17-year-old, asked for her hand in marriage, the parents said no, she fell ill, she died. He had someone draw her portrait or paint her portrait, and he worshipped that painting every single day to the last day of his death. Anyone else? You're probably saying that was a fragment sentence or fragment set of ideas. That's okay. Dig in? Anything? Sure. Terry? Richard?
Is the process of detaching oneself from worldly desires actually like?
I don't mean to, but it just makes me laugh. You ever been in love, Richard? You're joking.
All this stuff.
All the other times you were joking, huh? So maybe I'm not really in the mood to put anything on the board, and so I'll just make it simple, ridiculous, infantile, stupid. If you're able to close your eyes and stretch your memories all the way back, you're a hetero? All the way back to that moment where you saw this dove. Can we call her a dove? A white dove? There are no blemishes. She's like, so it begins naively. You know, you look at her and say, wow. Well, that's it. You know. And then life graces you with, I suppose, time. Somehow you summon up the courage. You ask her if she's willing to have coffee with you. And it just happens to be a lucky day because she's bored and depressed. She says yes. And all of a sudden your attraction, your desire, now lives in a container. You can see her, you can talk to her, you can hear her voice in a coffee shop somewhere. And you look at her, she looks at you, you guys have coffee, and it's magical. But you're not yet at the stage of infatuation. At a certain point, you look at your watch and it says like 10:55. You say, I gotta run. I got a philosophy class. And you forget the incident for a while. And then as you're walking home, you kind of walk around the lake aimlessly and you say, well, maybe I should call, what was her name? Let's just call her Julie. You say, maybe I should call Julie. And not because you know Julie, not because, you know, she has anything to offer you. You're just bored silly the way she was bored silly. And that's one of the nice things about boredom. You find things attractive very quickly. And so you call Julie, hey, you know, the way Oakland people talk, what up with it? You be wanting to hang out? What'd she say? And you know, it's like you're speaking French. And you guys again meet and you talk some more and you spend some more time. But this time when you leave, you take a part of her with you. You begin to think about her, feel about her. And then you want to send her a text, but you say, no, if I send her a text right now, it'll be too revealing. So maybe I should wait a little. So you wait and you wait and you wait, but about almost midnight, and send her a text saying, oh, Julie, by the way, it's so good to see you. Thank you. You're beautiful. But you don't really say love just yet. Time passes, you spend some more time, and one morning you wake up. And usually when you wake up in the morning, Richard, you think about me. Thank you. But this time you wake up and you think about Julie. And you say, well, that's very odd. Why am I thinking about Julie? For some strange reason, she's taking more and more space inside you. And then you do what every healthy adult does early morning. You use the bathroom. You sit there for a long while, because as you get older, you become more and more constipated. And you sit there for hours. And the only thing you can think about is Julie. With every push and pull, the name Julie comes out of you. You say, well, that's very, very strange. And then you jump in the shower, and all you can think about is Julie. You're at a point of infatuation. And you come and sit in class, but you can't focus because you're just occupied with Julie. And you keep looking at your phone, waiting for Julie to text you, but the text doesn't come. That frustrates you. And all of a sudden, your frustration is not so much about the meaning of life, whether you're a theist or an atheist. It's just Julie. That has become your new synagogue. And then in a very impulsive way, you grab your phone and you send her a text. Hi, I miss you. You know, you look at your contacts on your cell phone and you have hundreds of friends. And for some strange reason, they all look so useless. You know, you walk around the lake and the lake doesn't feel good. You go back home. And you go home and the home doesn't feel good. It's just like a box. And all of a sudden you realize there is no place you can go where you can be comfortable. You just don't fit in your own skin. And you go to work, your customers come, harass you, and you give them the middle finger. And your boss calls you into his office and says, I heard that you did ABCD to one of our customers. And you look at your boss and you say, Fago. You know, the drink. And you become like one of those zealots where you don't really care for anything under the sun except the thing that you worship. And for now, right now, it's just Julie. And then you send Julie a text, but there is no reply. So you get in your on your floor in a fetal position and just cry. You feel so helpless that and you say to yourself, God damn it, how could someone have so much power over me? I'm a grown-ass man, you know. I read all these books, I went to all these workshops, I meditate all the time, you know, and I'm a Jew. I only supposed to worship Yahweh and no graven images of Yahweh, you know. But those things no longer work. And you sit and you cry and you bang your head against the wall. And all of a sudden the phone rings and it's Julie. And all of a sudden you find yourself in the promised land. You're happy, you're excited. And then she says, let's meet at Pete's, like in a couple of hours. You take a shower, you know, you go buy a suit. And all of a sudden you come to realize that you can't survive without Julie. Julie is your life. Julie is your soul. And just in case Julie is in your life, death would be preferable to life. And your friends come to you and say, what the hell is wrong with you, man? It's just a girl. Just get over it. Be okay. If you don't understand what love is, you say to them. And as you spend time with Julie and you become obsessed and then you fall in love, she says, I'm going to go to Home Depot. I'll be right back. And you say, let me come with you. Please. She says, okay. And you realize you can't have a moment without Julie. It's impossible. Then time passes. And then one day Julie comes home and says, so Richard, listen, I have to go to Ace to get a couple of breakers. You want to come with me? And you say, no, I'm just going to just lay on the sofa. It's okay. Don't take too long. See you soon. And what you realize is something really, really interesting, is that in the clutches of obsession, infatuation, love, that happens to be intoxicating and all-consuming, You can't see yourself away from this person, not even for a moment. You have perhaps read some books about how to find yourself a bit detached, so she can't have power over you, push you around. But none of those books helped. But you guys became roommates, you spent a lot of time together, the mystery faded a little bit. Your body shut down, as all bodies and all psyches must, because the element of love is far too powerful. And then all of a sudden you realize, little by little, first you want 5 minutes away from her, then you want an hour away from her, then you want 2 hours away from her. Then one day you'll look at Julie and say, Julie, by the way, I'm going to go with my friends camping for about 5 months. I'll be back soon. And she says, okay. If while you were in love and your heart was being broken, you were bleeding because there was always a delay in his or her response, you could have read tons of books, you could have gone to workshops, you could have called Jordan Peterson, a renowned Canadian psychologist. He would fly to your house and give you a pep talk about this or that. You could read about the Four Noble Truths in Buddhism, you could read the Beatitudes, all those things. That wouldn't help. Because you're reading with your head, but Julie lives in your heart. These are emotions that your mind can't overcome. It's not possible. With some time, with some exposure, with some saturation, you begin to care less. And all of a sudden you realize you're detached. You can walk away from, as you say, worldly desires. You're either poor, you want things, but you can't reach them. So cunningly you sabotage the way you perceive things. Since I can't get rich, money is bad. And from that point on, you will begin to read Das Kapital. And you become a Marxist. You say all these nasty things about religion and money and capitalists and people with power. The flip side would be you have lots of money, you buy yachts, you buy planes, you go traveling, you spend most of your money Italian restaurant in Montclair. And then at a certain point you realize it doesn't matter what you eat, in the end it just turns into shit. Or you come to realize, as one of the Sufis did around the 9th century, that if you want to know why food tastes good, it's only from the beginning of your tongue to near the end. That's where your taste buds are. Once it goes down this pipe, it's finished. And your desire for certain kinds of food really have to do with your memories. Once in a while I sit back and say, Indian food. It's because you just have a certain set of pleasant memories and feelings about the food. So you can either walk away from things because you're rich, saturated, or you can walk from things because you're poor and you can't reach them. Let's say, if I was to make it a bit more personal, just you and I, and maybe Terry, let's do a threesome. Let's say you like philosophy, you like history, you like psychology, and you like business. And you're torn. Which one should you pick? Well, there are 4 pieces of advertisement. And you like each of them equally. And somehow you want to be detached from 3 so you can choose one. The long road is for you to be left alone. Go read some business books, go read some psychology books, some history books, and then some philosophy books. Take your time. And maybe in 5, 10, 15, 20 years' time, you'll figure out which path you want to take. The other path is, you tell me you like philosophy, you also tell me you like all these different branches of knowledge. So, well, that's great, good for you. You're a rich man because there's so many wonderful things you want to do. And let's say for some strange reason I like you, and I see that you can actually be very good at doing philosophy. So, but I also see that I have to compete with business, history, and psychology. So I say, Richard, why don't you come to my office? And you do. We'll sit, we'll have a cup of coffee together. Then I'll say, why don't you sit on the cushion over there, just read a book. And you do. Nice book, a very nice office, very comfortable. Turn the lights off, light some candles, get some wine out. And then all of a sudden, you realize that you're having an experience that you don't really have in history or psychology or business. And that's a crack in the dam. And then Tuesday comes, and then you say, can I come to your office again? Sure. And the more you come to the office and the more you and I hang out, the less you think about business or history or psychology. And all of a sudden you realize that what I have done without you knowing, I have made you detached, or I have manipulated you in desiring business, history, and psychology less, to the point that they are dimmed. All you want to do is philosophy. And once in a while you'll dip into psychology and all those things, but for the most part, philosophy happens to be 90% of you. You can't force detachment. It doesn't work. You know, for those of us in this class who have been in love, but we can't reach the person, you realize you keep turning and tossing in bed, and you say, God damn it, I just want to rest for 10 minutes, and it doesn't come. And the more effort you put into putting yourself to sleep, the more difficult it's going to become. I think you should live life. I think St. Augustine, he didn't really explain things well, but if I was to put some words in his mouth, I would say the following. Go into life and commit a lot of sins. And by sin, I mean you go into life because you want to have joy, you want to have pleasure, you want to be happy, you want to be successful, you want power. Go into life. Get really, really dirty. And then it comes a point where you realize that you're really dirty, you need to take a shower. Once you take a shower, you'll remove the dirt from your body. But if you haven't tasted dirt, there's a good chance you will always long to be around it. The Buddha is a really, really good example. Moses is a great example. Muhammad is a great example. Jesus is a terrible example. And I say he's a terrible example because he doesn't really have any life experiences. He's like Mozart. The moment he comes out of his mother's womb, he says, piano. But that's not the way most people function. Most people walk into life, get distracted by life, and all of a sudden they realize they have a talent for a violin, for example. And then they make sacrifices. And then they go through all these difficulties. They become really good at the piano. And when someone goes to them and says, I want to be a violinist, he says, well, you know, it's going to damage your relationship with your wife, with your kids, your job, this and that. And all of a sudden what you realize is that when you commit a good amount of sin, when you make a lot of mistakes, and when life stops you and you're forced to look at the mistakes and then overcome them, baptize your interior, in other words, be able to forgive yourself. Say, you know what, this is what human beings do. What you have is a good amount of wisdom that comes from life itself, not from books. Jesus doesn't have any of that stuff. And there's a reason why his disciples really left him, because he couldn't speak their language. He doesn't know what it means to have parents. He doesn't know what it means to have kids. He doesn't know what it means to have money and then pay mortgage. Jesus doesn't know anything about loving another human being. So he speaks to his disciples in a way that is incomprehensible, you know. And so, inasmuch as the disciples want to detach themselves, from all the things they enjoy. They can't. So, maybe I should have asked you earlier, maybe what exactly it is you mean by detachment. Maybe you're not really talking about any of this stuff. Maybe what you're talking about is you have a certain event that took place 10 years ago. That event was so intense that it has left a mark somewhere in your soul. And every time you want to move forward, that event shows its face and pulls you back. And now your question is, well, how do I detach myself from that particular episode? Sometimes time takes care of it, where little by little it loses its value, intensity, meaning, presence in your life. And other times you just need to seek therapy or someone who can bring it out and push it in your face. So, like, one day your son is going to come home and he'll have a pimple on his face or forehead. And he says, "Dad, what is this?" And you'll pop it. And that's really what therapy is. That something about you is exploding, but it hasn't yet erupted. And someone walks into your life and gently asks you to talk about it. That's like popping it. And after like 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks or months or years, you realize it's no longer bothering you. But it usually takes time. Yeah. Man, that was a lot of rambling about nothing. Digging? Anything? Kendra? We shouldn't seek remedies like a way to get over them or a way to attain them. A way to attain them. Who said that? Well, I hope it wasn't like one of those wise men, because if that's what they said, that's a stupid, I mean, not you, of course, but that's a stupid thing that they said. At first, it really depends on the sort of desire that you're talking about, Imagine you're bored, and boredom is not a comfortable feeling or place to be. And so you have two options. There is your laptop, and there is the Bible. Now, boredom is an empty space. I'm not the Buddha. I can't just sit and have my mind being completely blank. I'm just a regular chap. So when I turn on my laptop, the first thing that comes forth is this beautiful image of Kim Kardashian. That inspires the desire for pornography in me. That's one desire. And then there's the Bible. I also like what Jesus says. I find him to be very exotic. He's like a beautiful porn star in the spiritual realm. They both excite you in different ways. Porn is very tempting. You can attain it. But being in the presence of the wisdom of Jesus also is very tempting. And they both do different things for you. One gratifies you physically, and one gratifies you emotionally, spiritually. The spiritual part usually takes a while, because you may not really be in the mood to read the Gospels, and it may take some time for you to be able to be moved by some of the tales told by Jesus. And then you have to sit back and unpack them, decode them, understand them. Porn, on the other hand, is really, really easy. And let's say you're a little bit of both. You're both, to some extent, a seeker after wisdom, and you're also a seeker after physical gratification. What you've experienced in the past is that every time you watch porn and you satisfy yourself, there is a good amount of guilt and shame that consumes you. And you say, I've been here, I've done that, but opening the Bible and reading the proper passage that can move you can also be a struggle. It takes a lot of effort. They're both desires. The question is, which is best to attain and which is best to refrain from? That depends, of course, on who you are, what you are, how accessible one is, how easily you can get to this desire as opposed to the other one. There are lots of different factors. Some desires are actually really, 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 really good. And the more evolved, the more mature, the more meaningful a desire is, well, the more struggle, the more effort, it's going to take. So, it's good to have desires. It just depends what kind of desires, that's all. I mean, Jesus creates desires in his disciples, so does Malcolm X. I mean, look at all the awful things I say about Snoop Dogg, and all the wonderful things I say about, nothing really, like Socrates. And I suppose my intention is to have you gravitate towards Socrates than Snoop. To listen to the sort of music that reminds you of philosophy and the passion, eudaimonia, that lives in Socrates. Sometimes you know that your relationship sucks. And you've tried to fix it, it doesn't work. And you keep having that desire, let me fix it. That's a bad desire to have. A good desire is the one that comes up once in a while. Leave. It's just leaving or attaining that particular desire. You have to get rid of a good amount of memories, history, narratives, attachments. That's tough. So, Rosalind, go ahead. Purity? Yeah, there is. Can I tell you a story? I mean, it's a little kinky. Is that okay? And let me ask everybody's permission, because we live in a strange time. I don't want any complaints from any of you infants. Are you okay with a kinky story? Terry?
No.
You're the embodiment of kinkiness. Now, Wolf, you okay? And Olivia, you're over the age of 18. Good job. Now, I remember I must have been maybe 21, and Hussein Mihdad and I went to our teacher's house. Rosalind, you have to look at me. And then we knocked on the door. His wife, Shadi, opened the door. Says, come in, Hussein will be here soon. He had closed shop. He was on his way home. He comes home. He sees all of us. Of course, we stand. We say, hello. How are you doing? What's going on? You're going to laugh? I haven't even said anything funny. Oh, you were yawning. I apologize. And so he says, I'll be right back. He takes a shower. He comes back, and he's wearing his pajamas. And he's sitting. What he wasn't aware of was that his jammies had a huge hole. Rosalind, are you listening? He had a huge hole in the crotch area. And they were doing, I suppose, laundry, so there was no underwear. And I kept looking and looking and looking and looking. You know, 40 years have passed, and I remember that moment so vividly. Let me make it more vivid. Yes, yes. You've never really had a teacher, have you? You don't know what happens to you when you do have a teacher, how you look at them, what they do to you. It may all be a projection, but who cares? They give you access to a certain part of you that you can't really describe. And I remember one day when we were sitting and he was giving us some commentary on the poem of Hafiz. His wife, Shadia, had come in, and she would never gather with us. And she placed her hand on his knees. I was enraged. You know why? Hussein was mine. There is a sense of possessiveness, there is a sense of mystery, there's a sense of magic, there's a sense of, you know, like the virgin birth, that Jesus is not really the product of sex. God doesn't have sex. And so when God says Jesus needs to come out, he just does. But he's not produced out of human pleasure or human temptation or human physicality. He's touched by God. And so when you have a teacher like that, at least that's the way I saw him. Was I able to see his penis? Yeah. Did it arouse me physically? No. I connected his penis to this mystery that I saw in him. The spiritual mystery, if you want to call it that. Intellectual mystery. And I just wanted to know if the other parts of his body are as interesting, as mysterious, as fascinating as his mind. That was good. So, are we, any complaints? Yes, Terry?
Oh, is that why you were? Again, that
PP?
yeah.
What is wrong with you guys? I thought you were adults. Infants. You never liked anyone? And you never wanted to see where they live? What lives inside the drawers? I mean, like kitchen? What sort of like knives and utensils they have? It's the same thing. When you love something or someone, you really want access to everything about them. And it's not because you want to exploit, it's not because you want to manipulate. I suppose everything becomes a conduit to this sacred space. It's what they call totem. I think it's something that Matthew had asked, which was the difference between sacred and profane. Yeah, we're not going to talk about it, but you know, imagine that someone that you really, really are obsessing over, you love, and eventually she says or he says yes to you, and you guys go to In-N-Out. That's the first place you go to. And then you go there every week to celebrate, you know, your relationship. And then she dies. Like you sit on her and she dies. And once in a while you miss this person and you say, where can I go to find myself once again in touch with her in some shape or form? And as you're driving to Target, you say, oh, well, In-N-Out is just right there. And you go sit there. You don't order anything, you just sit. And you close your eyes and all the memories come back. How could In-N-Out connect you to some rich history that can create so many emotions about you? You become introverted, you become meditative, you sit there, you're sufficient, and all of a sudden say, I don't really want to be with anyone. Just want to sit here, be left alone for about 10 minutes, relish in what I had 10 years ago. That's a totem. Something physical that can connect you to something very spiritual. Or it doesn't even really have to be spiritual, just magic. It's like people spend like millions of dollars buying an underwear that Elvis Presley wore. So, are you stupid? You're buying like an underwear for $5 million? What's wrong with you? And the truth is, well, people enjoy magic. They want to be connected to something that's bigger than life. So, dig in? Anything? Wolf?
What classes are you teaching next semester?
It reminds me of a story about 10 years ago, 20 years ago, really. I was going out with this person, and I liked her, and she liked me. And eventually, we went to the bedroom to look at the Bible, naked. And while we were doing, things that adults do, she raises her hand. I said, yes. I have a number 1, 2, and 3. I'll be back. And when I come back, we can continue. Continue, you're having like sex with someone, and they say, I'll be right back. Where are you going? I gotta go shit. How attractive are they going to be to you when they come back? Not very. So here I am, talking about my teacher's penis. And here you're asking what class I'm going to teach next semester. I'm just joking. Maybe retirement needs to be very, very, very close. So, next semester, I'm teaching this class, and you should take it since you're going to fail. I'm just joking. Ethics, that's on Mondays and Wednesdays from 9:30 to 10:45. Then social and political philosophy, that's a hybrid, the second 8 weeks of the semester. We meet once a week, either on a Monday or Wednesday from 11 to 12:15. And then philosophy of self and emotions. That's ISA, hybrid. We meet once a week, either a Monday or a Wednesday. And then the rest are, online, useless. Am I going to see you there, in one of them?
Hopefully.
Good, thank you. Yeah.
Are all your in-person classes like this, or are they more just?
Oh, yeah, they're all ridiculous like this. Yeah. Once you know you can't teach, you just come to class and you have a good time and you go home. When I discovered I can't teach some 30 years ago, I said, you know what? I'm just not going to prep for my classes. I'm just going to go on there and just, Kasera, anything? Amaya? Olivia? Alexis? Yining? Kendra? Emptiness? Sometimes I'm a little too comfortable. And so I go home, eat something, and then I take a nap. And when I wake up, I'm in such a foul mood. It happens almost on a daily basis. I feel as if my life has turned upside down. I can't connect to anything. I look at my kids and I say, why are they here? I look at my wife and I say, why I'm here. I look at my home and I say, I feel so homeless. And I go for a walk, but there is nothing interesting out there. So kind of just pace back and forth. Sometimes it happens. You have these mood swings. Everything is okay. You're driving, you hear a song, and all of a sudden you say, I don't feel good. And you don't even know why. It's what we call being snatched. It's, in Arabic, we call ahl jazabeh. That something just pulls you up. And you look down and you realize that nothing down here is meaningful. Sometimes you suck the marrow out of life, as Emerson would say, that you like this music group and they have this really wonderful song and you listen to it over and over and over again and all these emotions come up and then you listen to it for the 1,001 time and you realize you don't feel anything. And all of a sudden you realize, well, it has nothing more to nourish, to give you. Sometimes you're in a relationship and it's fine, but all of a sudden you look at this person or you feel as if they have nothing more to offer you. It's empty. Emptiness is just part of life, you know, and it's a good reminder that that it doesn't really matter what you do, it doesn't matter who you are. I mean, consider that moment in the Garden of Gethsemane in the New Testament. You know, let this cup pass by me. That, yeah, I went to the desert for about 18 years. I discovered what God is. I figured out what wisdom is. I came back. I tried to teach. But you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. And all of a sudden you find the spiritual quest and the spiritual wisdom tradition kind of useless and meaningless and empty. Or imagine him on the cross saying, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, that my God, why have thou forsaken me? This is a man of faith. He believes in God. He loves God. He is in fact God. And for the first time, all of a sudden he's on the cross. There is no meaning. It's empty. He's abandoned. And I think what you have is the sense that there are going to be these moments in life. Some of them are manufactured. Some of them are time created, generated. And some of them are just part of the human condition, just the way we function as human beings. That you're making all these plans, and in the end, you find them to be completely empty of meaning and value. It's part of it, you know. Then you have someone like the Buddha who just comes forth and says, everything is meaningless. Just, you know, latch yourself, attach yourself to something that you assume to be meaningful, and just hang on to that as much as you possibly can. I mean, because he did. He found life to be meaningless, empty, void of any value, but he found wisdom to be meaningful. And so he tried to give that to people. He had gatherings, he talked, he gave sermons, you know. So, I mean, it's kind of like there are 8 billion people on this planet and you choose to go out with one guy. And you happen to love that guy. And you're devoted, invested in that one relationship. But what are you saying to all these other people? That they're meaningless to you. I mean, I'm not talking about moments of temptation. Just saying overall, when you find yourself devoted to the relationship, you say, well, you know, all things out there are useless. I just want this one thing. I mean, I've been in this business for about 30 years. And now I think about retirement more and more and more often. What does that say? I find the classroom a bit more empty. I find ideas a bit more empty. I find my own interaction, my own voice, a source of agitation. That's how it happens. But these are difficult moments to be in, because from the moment you're born, you're always so engaged and so active. Because that's what boredom does. It removes everything and you just sit there and there is nothing to hang on to. And so you try to find something to distract yourself with. And there are these moments where boredom comes, emptiness comes, you try all sorts of things to distract yourself, but there is nothing to be found. And so you get swallowed up by emptiness. And then emptiness creates meaninglessness. And I'm not a Taoist, I don't say emptiness is the way to be, And so these moments create a good amount of discomfort. If you have any power in your life, try to avoid emptiness. If there are any funerals out there, don't attend any, because they really do create emptiness. If there are moments of reflection where you sit back like Socrates and examine life, don't do that. If you ever look at your companion and whisper to yourself, why am I here? This is not giving me anything. Don't do it. Don't cause emptiness. Don't be the cause of it. In other words, don't think, don't reflect. And even if you want to reflect, make sure there are no emotions involved. Just intellectually look at something, say it's useless, but go back into it. Don't read books that force reflection. Yeah, it's like having a cup and it's empty, and you keep asking yourself, what should I put in it? And if you have found nothing worthy of your cupboard, it's going to remain empty, and then you're going to be thirsty all the time. It's not a good way to live life. Desire things. Isn't that true, Terry? Thank you. Yes, Matthew.
Is there any way that apathy is useful?
I think apathy is this very close companion to depression. Because the way I think we function through life is we fight to attain the things we desire. And when there are no thing out there that captures your attention, there are no desires inside you, and then you fall into apathy. Just don't care. It reminds me of, what's his name? That guy, you know who I'm talking about?
Yeah.
No, you don't. Camus. Camus has this book called The Stranger, and one of the main characters of this book, his name is Meursault. And Meursault has a girlfriend, his name is Marie, she's French. And one day this French young woman goes to this Algerian guy, well, he's Arab or Algerian, goes, Meursault, do you love me? And Meursault looks at her and says, Maria, you want me to love you? I'll love you. You don't want me to love you? I won't love you. It's up to you. You tell me what you want me to say. I'll tell it to you. Another time, she sees this dog being bullied by this owner, and she looks at Meursault and says, why don't you call the cops? Call SPCA. Meursault says, and everybody suffers. Let the dog suffer. You want me to call SPCA? I'll call. You want me to call? I won't call. Another time she comes to me and says, well, let's get married. If you want to get married, fine, but if you don't, that's okay too. This is a guy who has no self inside him, and no self means no desire, no passion, no meaning, no purpose. Going back to Richard's question, if you are on this path, perhaps without you knowing, towards detachment, in other words, it's something that has always mystified me about administrators, that they have to they come here at 8, and the higher up you go, the less time you have to spend with your family. And that's how it happens, you know. You fall in love with someone, you have a family with them, but there's also this other part of you where you want social status. So you become an instructor, then you become a dean. I'm done with my class at 12. I go home. But the dean has to stay here sometimes till 5, sometimes 6, and then when they go home, they have to do additional work. And then they become more and more and more detached, you know. And that's not what they intended to do. All they wanted to do was to increase their salary. But the cost of that is you spend less time with your kids, less time with your husband and your wife. And by the time you get to the president or vice president or chancellor, you don't even see your kids. You know, you don't see anyone that you once, long time ago, loved. And so if you're on that path toward detachment, you read a lot of books, and little by little these ideas kind of disconnect you from life. All of a sudden, when life throws you an event that is supposed to inspire you, you feel nothing towards it. And then your parents, your companion looks at you and says, you know, I just threw you a party. What's wrong with you? Your friends are here, celebrate. I remember when I was getting my master's degree, it was my second or third one, and the woman at San Francisco, what's her name? Mary Scott. She says, Amir, congratulations. It was with Ruth Nair. I think she's dead now, maybe. Amir, you should celebrate. It's wonderful. We just gave you your MA. Thank you. Thank you very much. Don't you want to like be a little bit more excited? I said, I am. I'm really, really happy. Because I didn't really get anything from the program. I just like the fact that I had nice, kind instructors who were incompetent as teachers. They were useless, but they were just nice people. You know, it's kind of like what Rumi had said about his father, that I have a father who's really, really kind, but he's useless for my intellectual and spiritual growth. But he's a kind man, but I have no use for him. So when you kind of walk into something and eventually you realize you don't have any emotions or feelings towards it, then there's not an ounce of excitement. Does that, Arvi, is it? Terry, yes. What was it?
Watching Super. That's okay.
Is there another question? Megan? Are you looking forward to seeing me and my clan on Sunday, 6 o'clock? Nothing. Anyone else? Yeah, Amaya.
I learned how to drive.
Sorry to hear that. See, when you ride a bike, but you just walk, there's only so far you can go. When you have a bike, well, you can go a little further. When you have a car, all these fantasies all of a sudden. Do you have a car? Oh my God, your life is going to suck. Because now you're going to go to Home Depot or In-N-Out or somewhere, get yourself a job, save some money, and buy a car that's like $5,000 with a bad engine. It drives for 2 miles and breaks down, then you have to spend more money. And then that car will carry your body to here and there. And then after some point you say, why did I come here in the first place? It's great, congratulations. Do you have your license?
No, not yet.
Photoshop. You know, I have a friend. He, $150. He gives you a license. He actually works at the DMV. If you want, I can give you his name, his address. He is single. You know, I don't think you guys appreciate what I'm doing for you guys in this class. Getting you a job, getting you dates, giving you a grade. It's like Costco. I'm telling you, I have friends who sell cars in Sacramento. You can go there, get a nice car for like half the price. Yeah, all you got to do is just have dinner with him. And that's it, just dinner. You know. And they're open and diverse. They can go any direction. You know, straight, gay, pan, fork, whatever. They're very new age-ish. So, I apologize for today's class. In fact, I apologize for all of my classes. So, do you have any other questions or comments before we... Yeah, Aaron?
Does pain do anything for happiness and apathy?
Sometimes the pain is so excessive that it pushes you into apathy. You just don't care. Because don't care in the sense that you try to look for remedies, none to be found, and eventually you become passive, you give up. But the pain is still there. Sometimes you find life to be meaningless, let's just say, and then you have a toothache. And you've been sitting in your room for days, never going out, but this toothache is not leaving you alone. So the pain forces you to look for some dentist, call them, get in your car, like Amaya, you have a license. You drive to the dentist shop, and it happens to be a nice young woman trying to put this jackhammer in your mouth. And then she looks at you, and you look at her, you say, "You're my dentist?" She says, "Yes." What are you doing after you're done with my mouth? Well, I was hoping that you and I can go and have Thai food. And all of a sudden you're married. Pain. It can create a nice life for you. Pain is good. If you don't have the resources to control it, to overcome it, then yes, it could be debilitating. My father-in-law had cancer, eventually died from it. He was never able to make peace with it. And the pain just made him more and more angry. Angry at his wife, angry at his kids, angry at life. And he fought till the very end. And maybe you could say that pain gave him meaning to fight life, to fight this disease. And I think he just found peace the very last breath he took. But yeah, pain did give birth to anger, and that gave him his life a good amount of meaning. Yeah. So Maya, how much money you got saved? You could tell us, your family. Your family, we're not family, but your family. So tell me if I'm getting like warm. 2,000? 5,000? 10,000? Do you have a steady job? Okay. Go to Sacramento, because you could negotiate the price in Sacramento. You can't do it in the Bay Area. It's impossible. Okay? So go to Sacramento, or go to Roseville if you want. If you're there on a day that I am also there, I'll come there with you to some dealer. Buy a brand new car. Put some down payment, and your probably monthly payment will be about $300. Can you afford that a month? Okay. When you buy a brand new car, it's going to be trouble-free. Hopefully it's not going to be a lemon for about anywhere from 7 to 10 years. I mean, that's like being in a great relationship. Okay? If you buy a used car, there is a chance that there may be some hidden damages. Okay? And there's a lot of headache that's involved in getting a used car. Some of them are really, really good, don't get me wrong. They can be really, really good. But if you can afford buying a new car, buy a new car for about 20,000. You know, in the long run, you save a lot of money, a lot of headache. But don't buy it from here. Geico. Their insurance is relatively affordable. Or you could copy mine. I'll give you a copy of mine, and just in case you get pulled over. Terry, anything?
Speak a lot about
Religion? Yeah.
how does that,
Hussein was religious, and so most of the ways that he taught us had religious components. And I suppose you could say that in some shape or form, my perspective about things have a religious bent. Okay. The other aspect is the culture from which I come. We don't differentiate between religion and philosophy and politics and psychology and spirituality. They're all one and the same for us. One of the things you need to understand about Islam is that Islam is not only just a spiritual movement, but also a political movement. You know, Muhammad was very much involved in the social life of his people, in the political life of his people. Okay? So whatever lived up here, he had to bring it down. And so the city of Medina, which is a name given to the Prophet of Muhammad, is a city where at least the Muslims believe that it's the first city that was governed by a philosopher king, i.e. Muhammad. Okay? Now, the other thing you need to understand about philosophy, religion, psychology, around the 19th century in the Western world, maybe just the academics were fighting with one another, I don't really know. But all of a sudden, what happened in the universities, okay, for the first time in Western academic history, you had a department of psychology, a department of religious studies, a department of history, a department of philosophy. And they all had their own function. Before that, the education that took place in the Renaissance period, you had to do politics, you had to do Latin, you had to do history, you had to do religion, and then you had to do math and music. If you were to graduate in all of these different fields in a good way, then you would have the cherry on the top, and that would be philosophy. So, you know, it's kind of like, if I was to give you a different analogy, you go to school, you graduate, you get a job, you save some money, you buy a house, then you get married and you have kids. In that particular order. You don't get married and have kids and then start looking for a job, because by then your wife and your kids will starve to death. Okay? So this idea of religion being very different from philosophy, philosophy being very different from math, that's not the case. All these different branches of knowledge are one and the same, you know. And so what you now have are people who just specialize in one branch without knowing much about other branches. I mean, look, what is really history? History is just some events that happened in society. And history just writes them down, okay? How do events happen? Well, some of it is created by life. Most of it is created by human psychology, the way people think, the 7 deadly sins. And then out of that comes the politics. And philosophy looks at all this mess and says, is there a way we can kind of refine the world of politics? Okay. And religion kind of says, well, look, the reason why you want to refine, make politics a better institution, for example, is because human beings at their very core have the kingdom of God inside them. They're noble, they're decent. And all of a sudden you realize, well, all these fields are really interconnected. If you do philosophy without knowing history, without knowing sociology, without knowing political science, well, you're not really doing philosophy. You can't do philosophy. I mean, consider this branch in philosophy called logic. What is logic? Thank you, really. Okay. It's your ability to be able to express your emotions, your thoughts in a very coherent way, a clear way, so people can understand you. You can understand you. To remove any gaps, inconsistencies that exist in the way you think about things. That's what logic is. But when you create all these formulas and Venn diagrams and this and that, everything gets lost. But you know the answer. If I was to ask you what it means to be black, redlining, that's politics. Human nature, greed, violence, segregation. You have an entire thing in it. And you can't just focus on one single thing about what it means to be black. It contains all of it, really. Amaya, what kind of a car are you going to get? Subaru.
Or Toyota.
Toyota. Huh? Subaru is good. It's just fixing a Subaru is expensive, just in case something goes wrong with it. Unless, you're able to find a companion who's a mechanic. I think you should fall in love with your car and then find a guy who knows how to work on that car, or a gal. First the car, then your companion. Toyota is good. And Nissan isn't bad. Wolf? Anything? Aaron? Oh! Yeah, Aaron, go ahead. Sorry. Jesus Christ, Aaron, hurry up.
No, I think that the profession that you are in, philosophy.
So after all these weeks, and after all these decades of me being in this profession, you're telling me I'm the wrong business.
I think you should be awareness. A comedian like Kevin Hart.
Well, let me end the class by saying something that one of my good friends said in the 19th century, Søren Kierkegaard. All melancholic men have the best senses of humor. Melancholy. Melancholy is like being sad, okay? But sadness can be temperamental. In other words, you're just born to be introverted, and then every time you look at something, it's always half empty. The other aspect of sadness is you kind of pay close attention to life, and then you come to some very, very dark conclusions about life. Kind of like the Buddha, all of life is suffering, or Jesus, or Socrates. And you ask yourself, well, how do I convey? And it's not like you sit back and you say, okay, maybe I can talk about the sadness of life in a funny way. It doesn't work that way. And I think like anything else in life, maybe you just have the ability or the talent to say the most awful things in the funniest of ways. It's like a clown. There is another story that Kierkegaard tells us, that the theater is burning, it's on fire. But the clown comes on the stage and says, "There's fire, get out." But the clown's face, it's always smiling, and the clown becomes very, very animated. So even though everything is burning, people begin to applaud the clown because he's so good, he's making them laugh, and then everybody dies. Okay. And these are, I think, great analogies. Because it is funny to kind of, when you sit back and you say, there is really nothing happy about the philosophy of the Buddha or the philosophy of Jesus or the philosophy of Plato or Socrates, and yet they have all these followers. That's funny. It's like getting married and looking at your husband when the ceremony is taking place, telling him, I really hate you, and you're not going to make me happy. I'm just marrying you. but just know that you will never, ever, ever in 1,000 years will make me happy. And the entire thing is funny. And the fact that you put yourself in this particular circumstance where you know that you're going to get old, you're going to get sick, you need someone to take you to Kaiser and wipe your ass, you know, and yet you have no choice but to get married. It's just a funny thing to do in life. You know, and if you have the talent or the creativity to just go on the stage and say the stuff which are so true in a way that can make people laugh. Sometimes people laugh not because they understand, they just laugh. And some people, they laugh because they understand. They kind of are able to see this grim picture. And anyways, so your nails look really, really good, Amir. Matthew, anything?
Is that how you would kind of define charisma? Is telling the truth?
No, you don't have to be truthful to have charisma. I don't know where it comes from. I don't know who has it. All I know is that it's not something you can manufacture. You can always have counterfeits. In other words, you can have gold plated, but they're not gold. And then you can have gold. And they both look the same. Okay? But in time, one will reveal itself to be true, the other reveals itself to be false. I think charisma, magnetism, I don't know where they come from. You know, some people try really, really hard to get them. They will never. Some people don't want them. They have them. We had a guest, and this is going back to Wolf's question some days ago. Sorry. It was a woman who could, she came over the house. They live in Canada. We've lost touch, of course. But she told us that she was able to see into the future. She was able to see the Iraq war. She was able to see the Afghani war. She was able to see 9/11, all those things. And then she was able to see that she would have stage 4 breast cancer. She was able to see all of this, and they all came to be true. And she told us one day that, you know, one day it was just overwhelming, all the things she could see, and then see them come true. First, she would see them in her mind's eye, and then she would actually see them with her own eyes. And kind of like Jesus, you know, she said, one day I just sat and I said, God, I don't know why I have this gift, but I just don't want it anymore. It's too burdensome. And then it was removed. Now, do I sometimes fantasize about having certain powers? Absolutely. Do I sometimes sit and do some rituals, hoping that those gifts will be given to me? Sometimes I do, when I want to be stupid, right? But some people are just born with them. How, why, I don't really know. But when you have envy inside you, and that envy is unexamined, and it's filled with greed and lust, what happens is you begin to manufacture things, and then you begin to imagine things, and then you begin to learn all the buzzwords. It's something that I experienced when I kind of, sometimes I get into these hiring committees, and we have to interview like 5 or 10 or 15, 20 people. And I got to tell you, Matthew, it's an awful experience. You sit there, and all these people come, and they all know the buzzwords. And this is like the administrative position, you know. And you look at this person, right? They suck. They really, really are awful. But they know all the right things to say. Now, you know they're not going to be a good dean, or a good VP, or a good P, or a good chancellor. But because they know all the right things to say, and because they know how to say them in the right way, you have a committee of 10, 15 people. They all buy this person's garbage. Okay? And then they get hired. And then they realize it's just an empty bucket. So you can find counterfeits. And you have counterfeits only because real things do exist. If there was no real gold, you would never have heard of gold plated. It would have never existed. You can have a lot of counterfeit Christians, but there is only one Jesus. A lot of fake Muslims, only one Muhammad. A lot of fake philosophers, only one Socrates. Does someone like me desire to be like a Socrates? Absolutely. You think what? I don't want to walk to my office having a bunch of people following me to the office? Of course I do. You know, and I am animated because I've worked on it. It's a game with which I dupe my students. And they think they're like in the presence of a real thing when in fact they're not. And it's only a matter of time before I'm exposed. So magnetism, charisma is something that all of us in this class covet. You know, when you read the dialogues of Plato, you walk away saying, man, I want to be like this guy. When you read Niccolo Machiavelli's Prince, you say, you know what? I want to be as insightful about politics as this guy is. When you read the Gospel of Judas, or one of the Gospels, you say, man, this guy can tell a story on a whim. Beautiful. I want to be like that. You know, and you desire good things. The only thing is, it's just not meant for you. You can't be like that. You know, instead of wanting to be like Jesus Christ, why not just invite people to Jesus Christ? Just tell them, here's the gospel, go read it. Don't pretend as if you are one. If you have it, you have it. If you don't have it, you don't have it. In the story. Anyone else before we... Aaron?
Is it possible for a broken person to fix themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, sometimes it's only your headlight that's broken. $100, it's fixed. An hour. Sometimes it's a transmission. It's just got to sit in the shop for about 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks. It's going to cost you about $1,000. Sometimes the car is totaled. And you call your insurance company, they come take a look, they give you some money, you go to a dealership in Roseville, you buy yourself a car. Everything is fixable. Okay? The bigger the damage, the more resources and the more time and the more patience that are required. The less the damage, the quicker it is to get it fixed. You know, sometimes you just want French fries. You know, you go home, you cut some potatoes, 10 minutes you have it. Sometimes you just want a whole meal. First, it's good to know the extent to which you've been broken, or anyone has been broken. Because if you don't understand the extent of your brokenness, you may have all these assumptions, you know, that if your brokenness has like 20-year history, you know, reading a book is not going to do. Watching a YouTube clip is not going to do. You can't fix something in 10 minutes that's been broken for 20 years. It doesn't work. And I say this because when you walk into something, it's good to know what you're walking into. Because if you know, then you're not going to deceive yourself and you're going to create this narrative that's false. And this knowledge allows you to face some of the facts that, Aaron, your car's transmission is bad. There's a good chance that this car is not going to get fixed. The guy wants 500, sell it. Buy a bike for a year, you know. Because when you create illusions for yourself, you hype yourself. You imagine you can do something in like 2 weeks. And when 2 weeks is up and still damaged, then you begin to have a good amount of negative conversation in your head about yourself. And that's going to deflate you even more. You know. So, yeah. But it's also very difficult to get to know the extent of the damage. You know, I'm not a mechanic. Sometimes you play with some things in hopes of fixing it. Sometimes you get lucky and fix it. Other times you realize the issue is just a little too complicated. So you take your car to a mechanic. I mean, that's a beautiful also place to be, because for the first time you realize that there is something that's beyond your capacity to fix. And in it there is submission, you know, there is humility. And you should be very proud when you come to realize that there are certain things you just can't do. It's beyond you. And it's good to be proud of that particular knowledge about yourself. Anyone else? Yeah. Oh.
What do you do when you desire intimacy but disgusted you when you have it?
So there are a couple of things. Let me first give you a very personal story, and then I'll give you one from an experience of someone else. There came a point in my life where I really fell in love with philosophy and religion and Hussein. And one of the things that happens when you kind of fall in love with ideas is that you find yourself as just being a mind without having a body. So there came a point where I said, I just don't want to have sex because I'm reduced to a physical thing, and that's disgusting, okay? And so I remember one time we had a customer, she was a young, very attractive woman. She said, Amir, there's this Chinese restaurant, you want to go have dinner? I said, sure. And then I remember after that, she leaned over and kissed me, and I kissed back. I'm a young man. And then I remember going home, and I felt like crap. And in fact, I called my teacher, Hussein, and I said, I did something nasty. I kissed someone. Can I come over? And I went over there, I broke down. He says, so what exactly happened? I kissed. He says, what? You only kissed? I said, yeah, I only kissed. He says, come on, man, just get out. Okay. So that's one way disgust comes about, that you have this idea about yourself, okay, that you're up here, and then you bring yourself down, okay? It's like you never imagined that you're going to write an essay through AI. Life gets busy, and it's the last minute that you have to submit. You do AI, and you feel like crap, okay? And you get caught. There are these other aspects of where many years ago, I had a student, something had happened to her when she was 5. Now, when you are 5 or when you're a kid and someone overpowers you with sex, something happens to you as a kid. And as you become a young woman, there is this disconnect with your emotions and your body and your mind. And so what happens is you get to be 19 or 20, and like any healthy adult, you want sex, okay? You want intimacy. But the moment you lay next to someone, your memory goes all the way back in time, and you're no longer 20-year-olds laying in bed with this person. This is the 5-year-old. And you feel disgusted, and you feel guilty, and you feel angry. And because there's a good amount of unresolved issues that still live inside, okay? There are some people who have had some traumatic experiences, but when it comes to sex, they're able to, how I don't know, but they're able to disconnect themselves from their bodies, have the pleasure of the body without them really being present and looking from the top down saying, oh my God, I don't want to do this, I hate this. I had a friend who had such an experience when she was very young. And every time she had sex with anyone, including her husband later on, she felt as if it's her uncle. Her marriage fell apart. She was really never able to love anybody. And I don't know, she is an MD, she's a doctor. And it's in some ways really awful because all human beings want companionship, but she's not able to unless she gets, some help in some way. So if the childhood trauma is absent, but you've buried yourself in books, or you happen to be just very religious because of your background, upbringing, your parents, I think what time ultimately will do, if you happen to be on a healthy path, if you're lucky to get there, is that time will eventually mesh the emotions, the body, and the memory together, where you come to a place of peace and acceptance, where you make peace with your worst enemy. And from that point on, once in a while, the memories in the adulthood will come back to haunt you, to damage this moment of intimacy. But you can have also some very good moments, And I think you should always keep in mind the wisdom saying that you can't make the grass grow by pulling it. That you may have a boyfriend or a girlfriend who may say, damn it, just be this way. It's okay. Trust me. And in as much as you want to, there is something about it that says, no, I can't, you know. And you shouldn't force it. It doesn't work by making any effort. You know, I think most of the things in life where you want to get to, they really need to happen organically and naturally. And it's one of the things that fathers have to experience with their daughters, or kids. Kids usually gravitate towards the mom. And oftentimes the father feels like abandoned or isolated or on the outside. And the wisdom tradition of grandparents or people who have had kids is that, listen, just wait. It's okay. When the girl or when your kids are 10 or 12 or 15, they will slowly walk towards you and they will call you dad and you guys will have a great relationship. But until then, you just need to wait. But make sure while waiting, you're always around. You can participate and be engaged as much as they will allow you, you know. And so as long as you're able to kind of remember that grass can't grow by pulling it, that there are things you want to get rid of, but it's really not up to you. Things need to come to their own maturity, you know, and then once they reach maturity, they will fall, like very much like a ripe fruit. It doesn't mean that you'll be free from them for the rest of your life. Once in a while you have to wrestle with them, but yeah. Yeah. I apologize. I was supposed to be home at 10:45. And so I need to go to my office, change my clothes, and drive like a maniac. Terry, thank you, as always. It's good to see you. It's good to see all of you. Have a wonderful time with your family, friends. Don't eat too much. Tell Spike I said hello. Okay, tell her that she's missed. Amaya, good luck. Olivia. Thank you.
Any more classes we have?
Next week will be our last. Yeah.